And we are live. Welcome, welcome everyone. SABIFF 2020. My name is Shatar Safira Collier. I'm the co-founder of Super Live Streams, and we're here with a wonderful panel. So you've just seen the movie, and now we have the opportunity to communicate directly with the filmmakers. At this time, I'm going to bring it to you, Ada. Welcome, welcome everyone. SABIFF 2020.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a panel that I really have been wanting to delve into. And to be able to do that, I mean, Darryl Lee, the director of The American Lows, created such a profound piece of work that it made it easy to just be able to follow through with the panel. He has as you just seen, some very hard, heavy hitters in as thought leaders, historians, journalists. And so we're going to extend it further with this panel that we put together called just Let's Talk About Racism. And I'm going to pitch it to our hosts for today. If there's any internet issues that come in and out, you may see me pop back on. But right now, we're going to pitch it to Cedric Duane Fisher, which is a publisher of SABIFF Publishing here in San Antonio, Texas. And he's going to pretty much take it away, introduce our panelists, and let's get started, guys, talking about The American Lows. Thank you for tuning in. And while you're watching, hit up some other people. Start a watch party. This will be a lively discussion, very powerful. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you for joining us. And Cedric, you can take it from here.
Good morning, everyone.
While you're watching, hit up some. Oh, I think we're going to have some issues. So Cedric, what we'll do is, because it seems like we're having some connectivity issues.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you guys can all hear me well. I'm coming in from Texas.
Yeah, we're going in and out. We're going in and out. So what I'll do,
hear me okay?
What I'll do, Cedric,
hear me okay?
You're going in and out. We're going in and out.
Everybody can hear me? Good morning.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Oh no.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, because we want to move this forward, I'm going to introduce our panelists today. We're going to start at the lower bottom. We're going to start at the lower bottom with Darnley. Wait a minute. With Darnley Hodge, the director, producer, writer of The American Lows. And then we're moving to the middle. Under me is Dr. Herbert West, an African-American studies professor. He's retired now. He was my professor when I was at Howard, but he's been a professor at Howard, at University of Maryland, and last at Bowie State. And then we have Dr. Cedric D. Fisher, which if we're having problems with the host, he might be in and out. If not, I'll just continue on with the panel. To my top of Darnley is Courtland Malloy, who's a longtime columnist with the Washington Post in, of course, Washington, D.C. And then we have over on the other side of me, Shawande T'Chawa, who is also a filmmaker and also the co-producer of The American Lows. So I want to just kind of start the conversation by just starting with you, Darnley. How did this whole concept come about for you to even, produce or write anything dealing with legacy white supremacy?
Sure. This film essentially was in making, my entire life just as a Black man in America, essentially. There's a lot of experiences that we personally endure. And as we develop and grow and mature, we realize that these experiences are not unique to us, but rather they're shared by everyone who looks like us. So more specifically, what motivated me to make this specific piece of work was my dissatisfaction and quite frankly, irritation at the way I was seeing the extrajudicial killings of Black men being covered in the mainstream media. I've been a professional television photographer, director, producer, and editor for over 20 years. And I run a production company here in the DC area. A lot of the major networks are my clients. And so I have a firsthand look and an up close look at a lot of this coverage. And I'm just watching, you know, what's going on with the coverage of Trayvon Martin, Oscar Grant, Eric Garner, the list goes on, Tamir Rice. And I'm just saying these folks are just so completely missing the mark in terms of what's really underlying the psychology and the mentality behind these actions. You know, the media is pulling them out as sort of isolated events and making it more about the police than it is the culture. So that's what I wanted to focus on. And so therefore, rather than being a person who would say, you know, well, I'm going to change the way that the media works, I'm going to force, you know, these major networks or try to force these major networks to do something different. I said, well, I have a camera, I have a microphone, I have some lights, I have some skills. Let me go ahead and apply those to telling the side of the story that I believe is being omitted from the mainstream narrative. And essentially the American Lows is the result of that.
Okay. And so how did you, I mean, and this was, when we had talked, you said this was like, you went back to grad school and this was like your thesis project as well.
Right. That was the context in which this sort of developed. I originally, after working in television for about 15 years and running my company for, no, actually I'd been working in television about 18 years at that point, running my own company for about 15. I'd kind of hit a ceiling in terms of the development of my production company and decided to go back to schools to get a master's degree in producing for film and television at American University, initially to get additional information to help me grow my production business. Part of one of the assignments that we were given, though, in terms of creating a capstone thesis project in order to graduate, was to create a video project. Well, obviously, at that point, I had already been doing a video for decades anyway. So making a video was the easy part. I decided to use as an opportunity to create the earliest iterations of this idea, which I knew I'd want to further flesh out into a feature-length film. So what I did at that time was a 10-minute short film called Cultural Conditioning and the Fear of Black Men. That 10-minute film was my capstone project for my thesis for my graduate degree. But then after that, my brother Shawande there, who he and I had been doing some production work at NBC, and you know, I'm telling him about working my capstone project, and make a long story short, we started bouncing ideas off one another and ended up fleshing that project out into a 25-minute short piece called Cultural Conditioning and the Fear of Black Men. And Shawande was instrumental in getting that 25-minute piece featured at a number of film festivals. We did the Martha's Vineyard Black Film Festival, rather, and a few other venues in the DC area and up and down the East Coast with that version of the film. And so after that 25-minute piece short was done, again, my mission from the beginning was always to do a full-length, feature-length documentary. So that kind of gave me the information that I needed from the audience to make sure that they were receiving the message in the way that I thought that it was being communicated, in other words. So based on a lot of the early feedback on those short versions, I then took the next, 4 or 5 years after that, fleshing out this full documentary. So, you know, I traveled to Kemet for 2 weeks with Ashra Kwesi, for example, traveled 700 miles down the Nile River from Cairo all the way down practically to Nubia. You know, I traveled out Chicago and interviewed Jacqueline Badalora out there. I traveled to Belize and got some footage of the Olmec, the colossal Olmec heads and these kinds of things, as well as tapped in some of my other connections and relationships that I had developed over the course of working in professional news for all this time. So I was able to add a whole lot of additional interviews that I didn't have access to early on. And out of the 20 or so interviews we did, Shawande booked probably, I want to say 6 or 7 of those, you know, and the two of us working together were able to compile a who's who list of contributors to this film. And after we got the initial production, like I said, of the short version done, I spent literally by myself in the edit bay, like well over 1,000 hours editing this thing, you know, and that includes the research, that includes going through thousands of photos, thousands of pictures, archival footage, archival photographs, going through and logging over 21 hours worth of interview footage that we had, et cetera, and distilled this down into a 1.5 hour feature-length documentary that has no narration, and that's deliberate. And I didn't want to take the shortcut of writing narration, because I thought that would, one, take the opportunity away for people to be saying something, because I had so many good sound bites. Everyone was saying everything that needed to be said. It was a matter of really just taking the time to distill it down, to weave that narrative through those sound bites in a way that made sense to the viewer. You follow me? So I spent a long time in the studio putting this together, but I'm satisfied with the end product. I think there are some things that I would have. Anytime you do a piece, there's always things you look back, you're like, oh man, I wish I could have done this, wish I could have done that. But I do believe it offers a perspective and a set of solutions and a set of ideas around the topic of racism, white supremacy that have been largely omitted from the mainstream narrative. You know, the fact of the matter is we have been engaged in a 400+ year long genocide that we've called all these other euphemisms, racial discrimination, you know, but this is a genocide. This is a war against Black people, a war against African people. And this is something that we need to take seriously and do as our elder, esteemed elder who's passed, Dr. Yosef Ben-Yakin has said, take whatever it is that you do best and do it for Black people. Being a filmmaker and editor is my skill set. So I decided to apply that skill set toward that mission in this case.
Okay, so I want to kind of not get you all out the way, but I want you to give us some connection to the film first, and then we want to delve into the journalist and historian aspect of it. So
Sure.
Shawanda, in terms of all the people that were there, my God, heavy hitters. You got Dr. Welsing Cress Welsing before she passed. I mean, how did you all gather these people, and how receptive were they to like get on and talk?
Well, you know, let me just make one thing clear. Even though I know Ada, you know, I knew Dr. Frances Cress Welsing since the 80s. It was actually Darnley though that hooked that up through, I believe, Joe Madison, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I just thank God before she passed.
You know,
that's amazing.
Yeah, but when Darnley started talking to me about the project, you know, I would say, well, have you read this book? Have you read that book? Do you know such and such? And that's really how it started. And then, you know, after about a year of that, because he was already, you know, well into it, he said, you know, would you want to come on board and co-produce this with me? And I was like, I was waiting for you to ask. I thought you never asked, because I mean, this, you know, this was my life, you know?
Yeah.
So it was nothing for me to reach out to, you know, a lot of these folks that I had known, you know, because I had a previous history of them, like Tony Browder and, you know, and some of the other folks, if they were guests that came through the studio, you know, I'd say if Darnley was like out in the field or something, I'd say, Darnley, you know, what do you think about having this person to be a part of it? So people like Paul Butler, Tom Thomas, you know, I just got through work when one of us, you know, were in the studio. My only regret is that we didn't get Dick Gregory. You know, because
we both would see him all the time, and he wanted to do it too, and we just never got to actually hook up the actual interview. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get Cedric. If you can jump in, we're having technical difficulties, and go ahead. I mean, but let's jump into the historian and the journalist. When you saw the film, what was your takeaway, and how can you expound beyond the film? From Cortland, let's start with you, based upon your experience as a writer and just being a Black man in America.
Well, first of all, my compliments to the filmmakers. It's very powerful, and watching these executions, I must say, it leaves me with some very, well, I get angry about that. And knowing also that if not for these killings being caught on camera, we'd still be going on, you know, as if things were, you know, status quo. And so again, hats off to, you know, Shawanda and Darnley for being able to use the technical skills to bring this to bear. It reminds me that 400 years of this will leave people traumatized and create psychological storms that Frances Cress Welsing was talking about that we need to address. And you can see people wrangling with this. How do we overcome white supremacy in our daily lives when, and here's the thing that maybe Dr. West can pick up on or whatever, that we continue to try to push our way into a system, to integrate, to be a part of a system which at its root is about exploiting Black people and will allow a few Black people to get in, but at what cost to themselves and everybody else. So it's very thought-provoking film you have there.
Mm-hmm. Herb, jump in, man.
Okay. Well, I'd like to, first of all, compliment you guys on what you've done. And when I was sitting here thinking, I wish we didn't have this virus. So this could go into the Black churches, into the barber shops, and just expose it to people because they really need to know this. And it's unfortunate. Too many of our people feel as though this never occurred, the racism, etc. And I remember the days as a kid growing up in the South, North Carolina in particular, where I would go to jail at 15, 16 years of age, not for stealing or killing, but simply demanding my rights. And fortunately, I had parents who were supportive. And so when I look at this film, it's so touching, and it will bring anger to you, as Cortland has just stated. And you wonder, where do we go and what's happening to the young people? And it's just like the plantation that existed in slavery. You take a few of us and give and placate them, and then the masses fall by the wayside. And then what the system would do, let those few that they placated, pacified, take control, and then they walk on away and conquer more. And that's unfortunate in regards to what has happened. And my take on this is we have to come to the grip of understanding. America is not going to give us anything, and we don't get it. America had 3 golden opportunities. When they did the Revolutionary War, they could have said, okay, this day forward, everyone in America would be free. And they lied because they said this was going to happen to the Native Americans. We know who the first person was to die in the Revolutionary War, Crispus Attucks. They didn't do it. 1776, they declared themselves free from Europe. And then they wrote a thing called the Constitution. In 1787, when it was finished, September 17th, they lied again. And so that implies they didn't have any plans for us becoming liberated, free. They were working on their plan to continue and develop new ways how they could use us. And then when we get to the civil rights period, it's nowhere in the world we should have been fighting like that. And what was happening in the 60s, as far as trying to become free again. And it's unfortunate. It's a cycle that continues. And the big question to me is, why do we stop? Why do we give up? Why is it we haven't taught generations coming behind us that no one gives you your freedom? You get it, but you're taking it. And this is something that we have not done. And so when I look at this film, I get very, very upset to think that we're still doing the same things. But it's information that young people need to know. And the baby boomers who shortchange their kids, and then those kids shortchange this group out here now called the millenniums. And we're just going in circles. But we need to know this information. It's very powerful, and I love it. And I just wish the churches were open.
Well, we can get it through. We can get it to him. He got the tape on sale. We're gonna get that information out there at the end.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, I mean, the problem for that I'm feeling as I watch it is that people are so like they react to situations that they're confronted with because right now they're videotaping and we've seen the massacres, we're seeing the lynchings, but if they don't see that or what, it seems like there's so much complacency, even acknowledging that there are biases within the whole system of America. So, I mean, how do people, especially the younger people coming up that, are in the schools and, integrate with their little kids, friends and all that, there seems to be, it's like it's not recognized or in terms of the privileges that white folks have. I don't think the kids coming up are recognizing it or coming to grips with it. And I could be wrong, but can you speak to that in terms of the generation that is not really even educated on this? They didn't go through the civil rights. They didn't feel like we can feel certain things that they didn't feel because of the privileges.
I see something a little different. Remember in the film, Anthony Brower said that we're coming to the end. This era is ending. You know, that the time of the white supremacists is over, and something new is emerging. I know I didn't hear that. I didn't imagine that. I'm sure he said it. And what it connotes, see, because Anthony talks from an African perspective of time going on thousands of years. This country is just the, whatever, few hundred years. And things do happen almost imperceptibly. Who would have thought that we would have the means to get such awareness of what is going on, so that in one film, in an hour and 30 minutes, a kid can get basically, a whole school year worth of information given how it's been taught. But we're up against something that is really baked into this system, and that we have become a part of in ways that we don't really know it. It takes a Francis Cress Welsing to understand how deeply, ingrained this is, because we have to survive in this system. And as young people, I believe, learn more about it, they're taking steps. And I'm seeing in some young people, in their dress, their refusal to try to go into the white paradigm stereotype, the dress, the hair, the African mannerisms, for which girls especially are getting punished for, expressing themselves, but they're being defiant nonetheless. And I think that there are some changes happening at the grassroots level, which you almost never see in the media, like the mainstream media. There is a lot of activity. There are people grinding it out who will never get the recognition, who people will never get the credit because they don't really understand sometimes what it takes to make things happen. And you have a lot of women, a lot of grandmothers who are doing that one thing that is so hard for people to do in a capitalistic society, and that is sacrifice on behalf of a group whose progress in the end you may never see. They are crafting for the future that they will never live to see. And I think that is a huge thing. Things won't happen in our lifetime, but I think that some progress is being made as exemplified by the film that, Darnley and Sawande have made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think another important point to make, I just wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Malloy was saying. I think that we have largely been in an era up until recently, with some of the more vocal demonstrations and these kind of things that have been happening all year. For example, we have been in an era where a lot of young people didn't necessarily have it good, but they didn't have it bad enough to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And I think that now, being in a situation, a unique circumstance where people are sitting at home, they can't be distracted by the game, they can't be distracted by a lot of other things that they would normally do, and they have no choice but to deal with what's coming across them on television, on social media, etc., concerning our situation. I think that's been a large catalyst and a large motivating factor behind the masses of people that we've been seeing worldwide saying, okay, enough of this system, enough of this culture that produces the types of law enforcement individuals that will just kill us at the drop of a hat, put their knee on our neck, etc. So in that way, I do think that a lot of young people are more motivated, are more involved, are more aware, and proactive than they might otherwise be or might otherwise have been even in recent years. I think that the key to taking advantage of that sentiment, though, is to make sure that they have the proper information behind it. They understand where this fits into a historical context. They also understand a vision for what we are trying to accomplish. One of my big issues is that oftentimes the vision that's articulated for Black people is a truncated vision. In other words, we aspire to be better beggars a lot of times. I'll give you an example. I remember the roundtable discussion that Tavis Smiley had about maybe, I guess, 12, 16 years ago now, when Obama first came into office, and he had Julianne Malveaux and Cornel West, and remember Dyson and Farrakhan and Jesse Jackson, all these guys around this, all these brilliant Black thinkers all around this table. And a common theme that kept coming up in that state of the Black Union or whatever it was a common theme was, there are 41 million Black people in America. If we just kind of get our act together and get on the same page, there's nothing we can't make this government do for us. That was essentially the overriding kind of theme. But my thing is, why is that the vision? If there's 41 million of us on the same page, we don't need the government to do anything for us. Why isn't that the vision? You follow me? We don't even aspire to be in control of our situation. That's not even the vision. The vision that we are often given, and I think even by well-intended elders a lot of times, is still one that is short of autonomy, still one that's just short of us actually controlling. It's a vision of us being able to be more powerful voters, as opposed to running our own candidates for office and getting our own people in at the actual positions of power, as opposed to being a sort of a powerful voting block that the people who are really in power have to go through. And that's fine. That's a good stepping stone, but we can actually be the people in power. You know, one of the part of the main reason that I wanted to absolutely include the statistics about the decline of the white population growth versus people of color over the next several years is because we're going to be in a situation in a few generations where we're going to have to be in control anyway. And one of the things that you know, because when I talk to people and I get invited to these panels and these kind of things, one of the things that comes up is often this idea of well, it's not realistic for Black people to think in terms of ownership and control and actually dictating the status quo because we don't have the numbers, we don't have the resources, and these kind of things. But my retort to that is, that's an excuse. We don't have the will, we don't have the collective will to, because we're not given that as an option or as a vision. And I'll prove that this way. What if the masses of America said, you know what, we feel so bad about how Black people have been treated historically in this country. From now on, we're going to elect nothing but Black presidents, nothing but Black senators, nothing but Black congressmen. All the police forces will be Black. Black people will control all the banking system, the education system, the military, the entire nine. Everything is in your hands, Black people. What are we really prepared to do with that? That scares the hell out of most Black people. The idea that we can actually be in control. We'd be looking for the first white person to tell us, hey, how do you drive this country? So we need to be, if we're really serious about being the people that we say we aspire to be, we need to get ready for it. And we need to be up a mindset, and that needs to be given to us as the aspirational goal. That's not even talked about as an aspiration for Black people. The most Black people talk about is being a voting block that somebody white has to listen to. It's the same way that Black History Month has turned into a celebration of the first Black people to do something somebody white already did. We are the first period in so many ways. And that story isn't told as much as the first Black person to be a surgeon or whatever. Well, we were surgeons for thousands of years. But because we've been forced, because the thing about this system is trying to figure out how to integrate Black people into it without connecting us to who we really connected to, without connecting us back to Africa. You see what I'm saying? It's trying to figure out a way to be Black without being African. What I'm suggesting, and what the film is about, is showing that connection, showing that the ultimate solution for us is to be our authentic selves. And again, I understand. Just look, I grew up in the United States of America. I didn't grow up on the continent. A lot of these things that I'm learning in my 30s. I'm 43 now. Things I learned in my 30s and 40s. But I have a 5-year-old daughter. Well, my daughter's about to be 5. I have a 2-year-old son, and I have a 5-month-old. They're learning things now that I didn't learn until I was in my 30s and 40s. You follow me? My daughter can count to 10 in Kiswahili and in Twi, as well as in English and in Spanish. You know, so my point is, we need to give our young people, take all of this energy that they have, all of this motivation, all of this desire to be proactive and to do something about this situation, and give them a vision for what they're actually trying to get to, above and beyond, we just want the police to stop beating us. Above and beyond, we just want to get out there and vote and assimilate to somebody else's system. You know, and I don't mean to hog the mic, but I just want to say just this last thing. And get this sort of truncated vision in a number of ways. For example, when I saw 12 Years a Slave, as I'm sure all of us did,
Yes.
the main character, Solomon Northrop, he's trying to get back to where, to where he was kidnapped from, right? And I was watching this movie and I'm like, wow, man, look at this. Look at how and it's a powerful story, but I'm like, wow, look how they have completely flipped the narrative that Kunta Kinte had. Kunta Kinte is trying to get back to his real name, Kunta Kinte, trying to get back to Africa, where he's actually from. Here's a black man who's been in the North enslaved and trying to get back to the North into his original slave name, which is Northrop. His name ain't Solomon Northrop. That's a slave name too. He didn't want to be called Platt. He didn't want that slave name, but he wanted his original slave name, with Solomon Northrop. And that's how they'll move the ball on us. Like, for example, these DNA tests. I go to my DNA, says I'm from Nigeria, and I'm like, see, and I'll tell my wife, I'm like, look at this trick here. Look how this trick pulled. It's gonna say my DNA test is Nigerian. Nigeria is not, the people of Nigeria are Yoruba, they're Ifa. Nigeria itself is a political construct created by colonists. You follow me? Yeah. The political idea of Nigeria is not African. But see, these are the different layers of white supremacy. These are the different layers where we're so upside down, inside out, and backwards that even if you get on your head on straight, you're still inside out. Even if you get from upside down, you're still, you know what I'm saying? So we need to really understand how many ways we've been twisted, pulled, and just completely distorted and perverted psychologically, and start really making the goal of peeling back all of those layers as much as possible. You know what I mean? And really understanding who we truly are and getting back to that, as opposed to just settling for being the people that the people in power have to go through if they want to get into office. Because to me, that's an intermediary goal. That shouldn't be our ultimate aspiration.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me jumping in and adding to why that is so important, because I shared this story that I read in the Atlantic, and it was called the racially fraught history of the American beard, and basically it was about a power dynamic right after Reconstruction, right after slavery, where Africans that were skilled as barbers were, who cut their masters and other white folks' hair for free. Once they got freedom, they started charging. And when they started charging, these same white folks whose hair they cut for free, the white folks rebelled. And basically, rather than buy the services of a skilled professional barber, they decided to grow beards. And then when they couldn't, maintain themselves, they couldn't maintain that haircut, that beard trim themselves, rather than patronize a professional, they would literally cut their throats at a time when tetanus was a death sentence. So we have to realize that this is the mentality that we're up against, because these people would rather cut their throats than give Black folks power. And why did they do that? Because the Black barbers who were making that money were putting it into political offices. I mean, it can be argued that back during Reconstruction, we had more of a sense of a power dynamic and the value of power back then than we do now. Because these Black barbers were putting up political candidates, like Darnley was saying. They were doing it. We did this back in Reconstruction, which in the grand concept of history is not that long ago. So why did that stop? Why did that dissolve? Well, the threat of killing, revolutionary thinkers like that.
And I think that also, just to piggyback on Shawande, I'm sorry to cut off whoever was just talking, but I just wanted to pick up on an exact point. But something that happened in addition to that was that we allowed the ball to get moved on us from a vision of freedom to a vision of success. Negroes these days are chasing success. We ain't chasing freedom no more.
Right.
And because there are some avenues to quote unquote success by someone else's definition, a lot of us aren't even looking for freedom. Freedom's not even on the radar.
But see, and that's what's killing us. The whole idea of this material stuff is it's ripping us apart, and it's unfortunate. And then a lot of these millenniums and other young people, they buy into this. They don't buy into the fact of I need freedom. I want freedom because if I get freedom, I can do more than this. And that's what the people thought about, I do believe, way back in the days of Reconstruction and how they came together. And then they worked together as a group. Today, we want to be the HNIC, and it's unfortunate. Right. Okay. Right. And then you look at the people who are making money. They flaunt that amongst these young kids that Ada was talking about, these millenniums. And so as though if I can get Gucci and Poochie and Wuchie, all of this, I got it made, meaning clothing. And that's not what it's about. And we got to find a way to tell parents, when you choose to have children, you have a big responsibility, which is to take care of these kids, teach them, liberate them. And we're not doing it. And so we lost them to a large extent, and it's unfortunate. And we have a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Now, I was thinking about that panel you're talking about, because I remember that panel with Farrakhan and all of them. But a lot of what you're saying, you still got, I mean, you're a great parent, you're woke, you're conscious, you know what's going on, but so many don't. And part of the whole, you know, bringing us over here, kidnapping us from Africa, bringing us over here, enslaving us, part of that whole indoctrination was taking away who we are.
Yes.
And so, and that continued on through the generations. So it's like we're here, and there's so much post-traumatic stress and all kind of just shit, and you know that we're filled with that people don't have the consciousness or the will or the means or the mindset to move it forward. And in addition to that, the whole supremacy, you know, and all that is bringing us down. And because it's mixed in the system, it's mixed in the laws, it's mixed in the educational system, it's mixed in everything that we do to move ahead. So I mean, how do we move ahead? How do we move ahead when we're not even conscious of the American lows? And we're talking with the filmmaker and historian Dr. West, journalist Courtney Malloy and Shawande about The American Lows, which is a film that you just missed, but we're going to tell you how to get it and purchase it so that you can have it to share with your families, with your, you know, classmates, with your churches. It's a very important film. But just how do we move, and especially in the environment that we are in today? We have the biggest white supremacist that is over this whole, you know, presidency. So it's like you have that, you have all the toxicity that he's pushing out there, the people that he's placing in office. And so it's just a lot. I don't know about y'all, but it's just a lot. And
but a lot is being learned under this guy of people who are in denial. You know, when I came to the post in '75, they didn't even use terms like white supremacy. There was no such thing as structural racism, institutional racism. You wouldn't find that in mainstream media back then. So people are slowly starting to understand what these forces are, how far they go back, how deep they are. And I submit that anybody who watches the first few minutes of this film and watch these executions will be reminded of our vulnerabilities and the ruthlessness of the people who are waging the war on us. So, and in moments like these, through film, through books, through teaching, I think we do make some progress. This thing that Zawandi was talking about, the razor, that is very significant because there are people on the other side of this equation who would just as soon have this country burned down rather than see Black people advance.
Oh, yes.
Because Black people's advancement, Black people being on the bottom of the system is what keeps it going. That's what racism and service to capitalism is, a foundational aspect of this country. When you see the unemployment rates skyrocket and Black people are always double white people, the stock market goes up. You know, it's just a perverse economic situation. And it takes time for people to understand that, I believe. And films like this really, really go a long way. You don't have to work. You just sit there and go, oh my God, did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
The numbers of all the people around the world who have been impacted by genocide. That was really profound. Those genocide behind white supremacy. I think that seeing that will make people take note of what we're up against.
And I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right, just to piggyback on Cortland, look at the presidency now. Look at the people in Appalachia. Have nothing, but they will vote for this man who is taking away medical care, everything. But they're dealing with this race, color. There's no such thing as race. That's a functional term that the suppressors put in place. And so what I'm saying simply, these white people are dirt poor, and as long as somebody is suppressing black people, as Cortland stated, that's all they want, and they will go without anything. And somewhere we have to put this consciousness in the minds of our people, which we are not doing a good job of. When you look at some of the people who are in power in Congress, the Supreme Court, and the comments that they're making, and how they're making sacrifices for the people who are pressing them and pressing us also, something is wrong with that. We're not educating. And that's the key to this whole survival. Education.
Yeah, I think
Dr. West,
no, go ahead, Maxie. I'm sorry.
Oh no, thank you. Well, Dr. West, speaking of education, can we talk about the variation in the digital era and the opportunities for education and Cortland, you as well, as an analog to digital journalist, can we talk about how the opportunities offer using platforms such as live streaming, such as e-learning, especially as we look at during this pandemic era at the rapid escalation in e-learning and other means of disseminating information. So can some of our panelists talk about, the role of technology in helping us get this information far and wide?
Especially since we're behind in that field, technology.
The digital divide, they said the digital divide is 10 years now. Cortland, we talked about this back in the day at BET when I was a stage manager 25 years ago, putting that mic on you on BET News with Ed Gordon. We talked about the digital divide then, 25 years ago.
Right. You still need people to know what to learn, what to study. There's some of everything out there. In fact, the Russians now are, confiscating parts of the social media just to inflame people, to misdirect people. And of course, you don't need the Russians to try to misdirect Black people. As Carter G. Woodson noted, this effort has been going on a long time. But no matter how much technology you have, you still need people to guide them. You just have to say, go see this film, go see that, stay away from that. Because as it's been noted, I guess it was Michael Eric Dyson who said in the thing about there have been people in our own communities who have put things out, typical images of Black people in music and whatever, that serve as self-destructive properties. So no matter what we have available, and then we have a lot available, but young people will always need guides. Somebody has to recommend the film. Somebody has to say, go interview these guys, who made this movie and stuff, which I'm going to do, by the way.
Okay. Hey, look at the minstrel shows, what they did to us. And look at what Black people today are still doing. The mockery, making mockery of us as a people, which makes no logical sense. I would never sell my soul and my people for $1, not like that. And the reality of it is too many of us are doing that. And there are certain things I will not even allow to come on TV in my household. And that's how I feel about it. And then you look at what Amos and Andy, you remember that? And Step and Fetch It, all of these people, what they did to us. And this is how white people perceive us. And when we don't act that way, they view us as what? Arrogant, nasty, etc. Although I think that whole technology thing is important because it can reach more people also, as far as getting out to people where they don't have accessibility to some of the material that they may need. Because one thing, if you made a productive documentary movie, I think people will go see it. And that's what we get to push them to do.
And I think also so many of our youth especially Black youth, are disinterested in education because it's an educational experience that doesn't reflect them.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of times documentaries, books, these kind of things that we are given in school, we don't see ourselves in them. So a lot of times people think that Black people don't like history. It's like, no, we're just not learning our history. I haven't found a Black person yet who hasn't been interested in learning more about themselves. But I think that we also need to have like I said before, a vision and an understanding that we can literally make white supremacy irrelevant.
Exactly.
Just by not, just the thing that the system hates the most is to be ignored, to be made, to not compare ourselves to where we are whether we're 10 years of them or 100 years of them. I'm not thinking about them. I'm thinking about what we need to do amongst ourselves, period. And it won't matter what you teach in your schools if we can educate our own children. It doesn't matter what you put in your books if we're writing our own books. It doesn't matter what you put in your movies. You'll just be telling a bunch of lies to a bunch of white people about us. But the biggest obstacle for us is us believing the lies that have been told about ourselves.
Yeah,
we're
but
viewing ourselves in someone else's lens.
How do you ignore a system that has indoctrinated you? How do you do that? And I mean, that's what we're dealing with.
Right. Well, again, I think all of us are examples of that, and all it takes, and the master knew that, which is why we were prevented from even learning how to read at all, because they knew that even if we were to be able to read the Bible they gave us, we would see ourselves in the Bible, and then that would disravel, that would completely unravel their entire thing. Because let's not forget that this entire system is primarily based on a perversion of Christian doctrine. Giving us a white savior, a white Jesus, giving us no understanding or robbing us of our understanding of geography and these kind of things. Anybody who can just simply read will read the Bible and say, oh, this is Africa. I'm African. Therefore, these people are related to me. Therefore, I see myself in divinity. There's a reason why they made all the pictures and the paintings and all these angels of all white people, Jesus white, and where are we in that picture? So part of unraveling that indoctrination, as you mentioned, Ava, is just simply exposing our people to any of this at any level, and they'll want to go down the rabbit hole and dig more. They'll want to learn more. It's no different than if someone has been drinking muddy water their entire life, and then you give them a clean cup of water. They're like, oh, all they need is a sip. And trust me, they're going to want the whole gallon. You know, so many of our people are prevented from even getting that sip. But again, we are in control. We raise our own children. You know, we interact with Black people all the time. There's a reason why we've been conditioned to fear each other, to be divided amongst all levels like that. The whether it's real or not, the Willie Lynch letter outline, even though it was probably a hoax historically, is still very valid in terms of the messaging, and that is divide us along every line possible. As soon as we shed ourselves, those of us who do know, shed ourselves of that mentality and are proactive at reaching out to our people, the mentality just starts spreading like wildfire. It's like sparking a single match in a hay barn. You know, you say, hey, well, you only have one match, and we have this whole, warehouse full of hay. How are we gonna light this whole thing on fire with that one match? That's how you light it on fire. So that's my answer to that.
Go ahead, Doctor. Go ahead, Doctor.
Well, we have to understand also the commonality that we have. That's what we must start moving towards. Look at what happened with African American history. You know where it started? San Francisco State. Not at a HBCU, where it should have started, where you can define yourself. And then after it started at San Francisco State, then it spread to other PWIs. Then later on, it comes to our Black schools, where it should have been at the very beginning. We should have set the tone. We didn't do it. So what are we going to do? Okay, are we going to realize that the common goal is the same in regards to where we want to go and what we need as a people for survival? And the idea is to get out of this colonialism.
And realize the tricks. I mean, like Dr. West just said, remember, none of these HBCUs were started by Black people. They were started for Black people by somebody else, because they wanted to control our education before we got control of our own education. HBCUs, in my opinion, should be graduating tens of thousands of graduates every year with an education about counteracting white supremacy. If we were in a system of white supremacy, we should have long developed a system of counter white supremacy. Ourselves and HBCU should have been the main incubators for such a mentality. But every single person I know who's gone to an HBCU or taught at an HBCU has told me that they're always hamstringed by the administration of those universities. It's always the high, the board members, the presidents, all the people who are responsible for getting the money, all those people at the very, very top are hamstringing all the well-intentioned professors who would like to embolden their students, and the student bodies are usually the ones who are the most active, the most vocal, the most militant, and the administration's objective is to educate all of that out of them by the time they graduate, and to just graduate a lawyer, not a black lawyer, or not a black dentist, or an architect, not a black architect. And so we need to, like I said, we really need to understand. That's part of the reason I created The American Legacy of White Supremacy as the title, because I wanted to focus my energy and focus the viewer on how this system is so insidious, and how it actually works, and how deliberate it is, and at how many levels. And that's one of them. And we didn't even get into the film, but it's at every single level. There are checks and balances. There are boxes within boxes within boxes that we have to unpack to really get at the heart of what this system is about. And there are layers that we have to peel back within ourselves. Yeah, you know, and understand how I find new things about myself. I'm like, oh, see, there goes that Eurocentric education coming rearing the surface again, because I'll think about something in a particular way, and I'll go, you know what, that's my miseducation kicking in, you know. And so once we are aware that we've been miseducated, we become conscious of when it starts revealing itself, and then we start conscientiously counteracting that as well, I believe.
I think that one of the biggest problems is the money part of it. You know, capitalism is built on racism, and people, you know, you can squeeze. You don't have to squeeze people a whole lot if you have that dollar out there, because people have to live, and the capitalism is a very individualistic enterprise, or cliquish enterprise, and we have to come together, on that, to understand that, and also, just to figure out what the reward and punishment schemes, how much sacrifice are we going to take on behalf of Black people? The money part of this, you can get Black people to behave worse than white people for very little money. In that film, when Paul Butler talks about being followed home by Black policemen, they were making a decision about, okay, this is what I get paid for. To get my money, I will sit on this brother's porch and demand, that humiliate him basically in front of him. And that is just this normal looking thing. People see that, they say, oh yeah, that makes sense. As the officer said, don't you like it that we're patrolling your neighborhood? The rationalizations, the justifications, and the denial around this system, it all comes down to money, and how little will you earn to advance this cause? So that.
And you can look at that in a larger sense in terms of the money, because you have so many. I'm looking at the entertainers and the influencers that everyone, the kids and stuff look up to. It's about the money. It's not about doing activism. There's no Paul Robesons anymore, that will come back and deal with activism and educating folks. And so that is a key part of it, money, but it's also mentality. It's changing or shifting that mentality that so you're not impacted by the money.
Or so that you can use that mentality in order to attract the money. I'll give you an example. I'll outline a plan for you right now, how all these HBCUs could become unbeholden to the people who pay them now. If we cultivated a mentality, look, I read an article a few days ago saying that UNC Chapel Hill, if they don't have a fall sports season, they'll lose about $52 million in revenue. Now, if you don't have a basketball season, you lose $52 million. Well, that means that about 10 Black kids are responsible for that $52 million, because you don't have no championship basketball team that's not built on the back of Black kids. So just within just a few semesters, if we had the mentality to convince our best our top Black high school recruits to go to Black schools instead of white schools, now those Black schools become championship winning teams. Now those black schools are getting the major sponsorships, the TV contracts. They're getting tens of millions of dollars funneled into them. And guess what? They're not up for losing their accreditation every 5 minutes anymore. They're not up for, writing the alumni association, writing this person, that person, try to get funding for these black schools like I see them doing every 5 minutes. Just by getting the best black athletic talent, we can funnel millions and millions of dollars into our schools that would then make those schools unbeholden to the people who pay them, which would free them up academically to then start teaching what they wanted to teach without worrying about losing money if we teach black empowerment at this school.
Exactly. Yes.
So the mentality can lead to the money as well, is my point.
But those black athletes who are not going to those black institutions are dealing with lows that are recruiting them to the white institutions. So that's a serious issue. There was a brother a basketball player that just said he was going to Howard, and I can't remember.
Yeah, McCall Maker.
That was
he's the top athlete he's the top athlete in the country.
That was pretty awesome. That don't happen usually. That don't happen.
But here's an example of what Darlene's saying. Major. When you look at these sports shows with these black commentators, and they're scratching their head wondering, well, why is he? I mean, they're not going to get coverage. He's not going to get coverage playing for Howard. It's that mentality.
Yep.
Well, but it's also structural changes at every step. So you may have the athlete who goes to the HBCU, but if the scouts aren't going there, if the whole system along the way, that's why it's called institutionalized racism. Because it's at every step in the process, from the time they're scouted in high school all the way up to the time they put that NFL helmet on. There's at every stage has to be adjusted. Look what happened to Kaepernick. Just one political statement, you out the game. So at any point along the way, if you don't have the support system and the structure to embrace you and help carry you through, these are teenagers. Are you going to go with the proven path A, red pill, or the less proven path B, the blue pill? And that's a decision that they are facing these kids from the moment that they're forced into these structures. So the trailblazers, what do they say? Pioneers get slaughtered. Settlers prosper. So much respect to the trailblazers and the pioneers, but we have to be able to prepare support at every stage of change along these paths.
Or we need to be prepared to sacrifice.
Exactly.
I get it. Some people don't want to leave the plantation because Massa got them these nice shoes and he got them a nice mattress, and they don't want to leave that behind. Other of us are willing to sleep barefoot on the floor in order to be free. And more of that mentality, the more that mentality is put out there, you sprinkle it out there, you're gonna get one here, then 2, then 10, then 20. The next thing you know, that's the entire zeitgeist amongst young black people. I don't expect it to happen overnight, but what I'm saying is this mentality is not even put out there as an option for black kids. It's not even an option.
No, it's not.
All you have to do is just let the kids, since most black kids are in predominantly black public schools, there's no reason why every black kid should not be able to take that trip down the Nile River, and see everything that was in this film before they graduate from high school.
Exactly.
Get them while they can, before this white supremacist attitude is calcified in their head, and that's where you have to start early, and we have something really profound.
And we have to do it ourselves. We have to do it ourselves. Like I could have sat back and said, "Oh, how come Nat Geographic isn't telling the whole truth? How come this other public? How come Discovery Channel isn't doing?" No, I did this film. That's why I did it. Forget National Geographic, Discovery. I ain't studying them. I'm worried about my people, so I'm going to put in the work to do what I need to do to disseminate the information I have to my people. You're doing this film festival. Why? You're not saying, "Oh, how come these films? Let's fight to get these black films into Cannes or into Sundance or into these other." No, you said, "Let me do my own festival." I don't care what anybody else is doing. I don't care what white people have established. I don't care about the fact that they may be ahead or whatever. We still need to do our work. Like I said, if everything were handed to us right now, we'd be looking for the first white person to tell us how to drive this vehicle.
Exactly. Yes.
And we need to get out of that mentality. Forget them. Well, let's put in the work. Let's do the work that let's use whatever you know how to do. You created this live stream channel. You ain't sit up here and say, "Oh, we need to get this content on the YouTube or some other establishment." You establish your own. So we got our own film festival. We on his own black live streaming platform, showcasing a film that another black man made independently. This is the solution, is what I'm saying. So let's not talk about what we ain't doing.
Yeah.
That's what we are
Right.
doing.
Yeah,
And let's be honest, we're doing it. We're
When
literally
we
in a format and a platform doing it right now, talking about what we ain't doing. We are doing
Yes,
it.
we are.
We're doing it. So let's kill that old tired narrative because we are doing it. We are putting in the work.
Oh, so
We're
then
doing
let's
it
do
right now.
let's do one more thing and let us all make this effort. Let us all make this effort, and that's the cross-generational outreach. Because because we there should be some teenagers on our feed right now.
Absolutely.
And in this discussion. And we should be listening, you know.
Yeah. Because we always a day late and $1 short. Okay. And that's reality. But back to these athletes, and I've been fighting like I don't know what to get them into HBCUs. I went to North Carolina Central. Sam Jones went to North Carolina Central. Okay. The Sam Jones who played for Boston. He was good, real good. And what happens if you're good, they're going to find you. And that will happen. And people don't realize North Carolina, it was North Carolina College then back in the 50s. They played Duke University. Duke would not play them at a regular game. So NCC went to Duke and played them one night, and NCC beat the stew out of them. Okay, these are the kinds of things that we don't know about. Bobby Dandridge went to Norfolk State. Bob Love went to Southern University down in Cortland's territory. Okay, yes. Okay, so we have had them. But the point is, though, we don't push. We don't go and get these young people. We'll just say they are off track, leave them alone. Well, they're going to stay off track if you don't do something for them. I've had students who come in class acting as though they were super bad. And I told them, if they want to rumble in my jungle, come on. Okay? And if they beat me up, they're going to know that I was there. And then before half of the semester, they come to me and they want to talk. So I understand where you were coming from. And that's what we got to start doing. And we're not doing enough of it. And we're killing ourselves. When we don't help them, we're destroying ourselves. And I don't want to be part of that. I want to be part of the generation that's going to make a change. And that's where I'm coming from.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
So we're that generation. We're the continuation of our ancestors who had that same mentality right after slavery.
Yeah.
You know, we're here. You know, we have to duplicate ourselves through teaching the younger generation how to do this. Show them how it's done.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. I just feel that the elders had they dealt head on with a lot of the shit that America's given them, the racism, and they've seen it firsthand. They've witnessed it. I'm the first to go to college. My generation in my family, but it seems like our generation is. The kids are not coming out with the strength and the vitality and everything because of the integration, because of the things that kind of watered us down.
Our grandparents said the same about us, Ada.
I just feel like our kids, I don't know. I see it in my
we can't lose hope. We cannot lose hope.
No, I'm not losing hope, but I just said I see it.
There is a Dr. Francis Welsing out there in med school right now. There is the next one. We just must discover her, and we must elevate and embrace. You know, so we and if our eyes are closed, thinking that this generation is lost or troubled or that we can't, we have to be miners across the generation. We have to, even our own generation. Look how many of our generation are salty, bitter, vexed, angry, fed up, broke, struggling. So we have to be miners across generation and elevate those who are out there doing it. We can't just be nostalgic on our old legends and our old heroes. You know, we must respect them, but we can't live just there.
Very well said.
Remember Francis Cress Welsing's chessboard situation, where she says some people will go and try to play without knowing how to drive the truck, right? And while others will take time to sit and watch and try to understand the game before they get in it. And I think there's a lot of learning now. The technological advances, which are increasing at a phenomenal rate. I think it just takes a little time for people to kind of get a grip on, because you're making a quantum leap over into what is not there yet, but you figure it's going to be there. So you have to have some vision and be ready to land where this thing will be, or else you get left behind. I think that takes a bit of time, and it's always going to be just a few at first, punching through, doing something revolutionary, something that nobody else has done before, opening up the hole, then the masses come afterwards. No revolution has ever been led, fomented by the masses, but started with people with it, and brought others along. I think that's what's happening. I think the future leaders are sitting at the chess, sitting and watching how the game is played.
And that's so important.
Trump, yes. Yeah. Trump has made it pretty obvious, like a telephone with big numbers on it. You don't miss much by watching how blatant this is going on. But that gets down to the root of the matter, and people are seeing it. Yeah.
And as far as the tools, making sure that people not only know that tools exist, but know what they are, so that they have the right tools to do the task that they are trying to do, and also to look at the history and see how those things can shape the future. Like, as you were saying, Ada, that these young people, they are dealing with a lot of things. They're dealing with a lot of issues on social media. They have the different platforms making them feel a certain type of way about themselves. And it's important for them to know that they have confidence, for us as parents to support them, you know what I'm saying, to make sure that they have the confidence to go forward. And then, yes, to know that they have tools to make a difference, and then to know exactly what those tools are and how to use them. And I'm so glad that you were creating this film festival so that we can have these messages on screen for people to see. It makes a difference.
Big up, Ada. Big up, Ada.
Big up to y'all.
Yes,
applause. If you with the partner. So, where do we go from here? We're in this toxic environment. We are dealing with, black nationalism was one time, white folks feared it. Now it's like white nationalism. I'm like, where did that come from? So, I mean, where do we go from here? What would you suggest to young folks, and even black folks our ages, our generational ages that ain't woke? I mean, what do you suggest?
What I would say
other than seeing the American lows, what would you suggest?
I would say, I would suggest that they understand that every time they turn on their TV, every time they turn on their social media, every time they pick up a newspaper or a magazine, they're getting their daily dose of white supremacy. I don't care how black the source appears to be. They are getting an indoctrination, a vision for what the future looks like and where they fit into it or don't fit into it. And they need to be very conscious of that fact. Otherwise, they can be they can get cut off before they even get started. They're given a vision that's the wrong vision, that's a truncated vision, or they're given no vision at all. If you're a black man within this society, you're getting the message that you're not necessary or wanted. If you pay attention to what's in the media, you get the message that there is no role for you, and that especially if you're a masculine black man, this idea of being overtly masculine and black and male on top of that is like, oh my gosh, so and that's designed to give you an identity crisis. That's designed to make you a less suitable husband, a less suitable father, a less suitable leader, and that you don't even aspire to those things. Okay, so we need to be. So the first thing I would tell young people is to understand that you are under relentless psychological assault the moment you expose yourself to any sort of mainstream media source, because it's not by us. You're getting messages that are designed to further the process of building a slave mentality. A slave isn't bought, a slave is created. And the mentality that we suffer from, that we're talking about our young people, is a mentality that has been manufactured for them. And they've been given a vision of temporary gratification, dancing, singing, the same old stuff that they do, the distractions. You know what I mean? The drugs and alcohol, the partying, and that sort of very low level, low vibrational aspiration. They need to understand that's all a trick. That's all a setup. And then the question becomes the next natural question comes, okay, what happens after I start ignoring that? And then what you need to do is tap into your spirit, because in this atheistic Eurocentric society, people act like the spirit and act like God is an option or something you have to, quote, believe in, because again, Europeans fundamentally are atheists. There's been no major religion that was ever, or spiritual school of thought that's come out of Europe. Okay, no, Europe has not created a single spiritual school of thought. You can't name a single religion that exists that was originated in Europe. Okay, but yet these people have imbued the rest of the world with this mentality that that having a spiritual grounding is somehow optional, and they exploit that sense of loss in our young people, and that's why we run around lost, not knowing what the next step is, because we haven't learned to meditate. We haven't learned to allow the Spirit to talk to us and guide us where we need to go. So that's the second thing.
Let me put the age thing in the perspective before Darnley goes on.
Sure. I'm done. Everybody
on the panel, except for Dr. West, is a youngin' to me. so I think it's also important, no matter where your station is to make sure we listen to the youngins, because they really do have something to say, and there is incredible wisdom that the children do teach, and what we have to do is a lot of times is listen to them and follow their lead in many ways. So, because this film was made by a youngin', right? Two youngins.
Yeah. When it comes to the young folks, our statement is first assumption, make no presumptions. Don't go in. So there's a young rapper out right now named Yellow Pain. On first look.
Yeah. I saw that video. Yeah,
absolutely.
And the way he flips it.
He plays both sides.
When it starts, the video, you're like, okay, what is this dude on? And then when it ends, it's just like the sucker punch, man.
That's right. Big props to Yellow Pain. Everybody check out his video. Little Baby's got conscious videos. So when it comes to this generation, I can remember being 19 years old, publishing Black Reflections magazine, and discouraged by professional journalists.
Not me.
Not you, Cortland. Absolutely not. But not Joy Bramble from the Baltimore Times, not Dorothy Bramble from WEBB. So there was a whole slew of professional, but there was others who were like, why are you putting this out there as your career introduction? I was discouraged from that by some of the OGs, and so and now being a young OG, I try to keep my ear open with not going in with these presumptions. Just cause the baggy pants. I remember my grandma heard it through the grapevine once it was done by Roger Troutman, And so we got to keep our generational ears open while still retaining our values and our positions.
Very eloquent.
And I think we just need to get on code too. I was talking to Shwande the other day, and I was like, look, I was talking about one of my other sisters, and point she was making, she said, listen, and this is how you kind of gauge where people are. You see a white homeless woman with kids, and you see a Black homeless man who you got a drinking problem, and you got a $5 bill and a $1 bill. He's getting $6. He is getting $6.
I feel you, my brother. I feel you.
May I ask Darnley one question, and that is, speaking of the mainstream media imagery, you watched a lot of films of Black men being executed by police, and it's a devastating imagery. What did you come away with? I mean, how did that make you feel? And what do you think people should take away from that when they see the film?
I think for me, well, I should say I grew up in a law enforcement household. My dad just retired after 40 years in law enforcement. Okay, so I've seen a lot of those images growing up my entire life. I grew up going on the gun range and all that kind of stuff with my dad. I heard all the stories he and his other police friends talking about things that would go on. I know my dad has been stopped countless amount of times and almost killed by another police officer who saw that he had a gun on him, didn't know he was a cop, and harassed him, these kind of things. So this reality, the fact that it's caught on tape now, I find an opportunity to sort of share some of what I've known about literally my entire life in this sort of context. I would say my perspective on it, though, is, I don't have a confusion about who my enemy is. So when I see the enemy attacking, I'm not particularly taken aback or you know, or surprised. I'm like, well, this is the enemy. These are race warriors who largely, many of them got this job in order to have the authority to be able to kill us with impunity. And so it's not a case where I don't buy into these mainstream narratives of it's everything except racism at play, you know? So, you know, obviously, you know, you could tell by my just demeanor in general, I'm a very proactive kind of high energy kind of person. And, you know, I like to consider myself as part of a warrior class in that way. So it's one of these things where it just made me that much more motivated to expose this and to really get this done and to really make my contribution to a project that I feel will at least contribute to improving our collective condition, or at least our collective understanding of our condition, so that we can then come up with cogent strategies to respond to the system, as opposed to just arbitrarily reacting to it when it reveals itself to us sort of on the local level. Yeah, so that's how I would answer that, I suppose.
All right.
Well,
and can I just hop in and answer from my perspective, Courtland?
Yes,
Courtland, because another thing that is a bit disturbing is the normalization of these murders, to the point that it's almost like watching murder porn at our expense. You know, and you know, that's disturbing, because you know, the end result is that it creates a desensitization to our lives. You know, that creates this psychological narrative that Black lives don't matter. You know, so and the way that they protect, like, people who attack us, like our enemy. For example, that couple that were lawyers that had guns and were pointing them at these Black Lives Matter protesters, you know, and pretty much got away with it until someone decided to file a civil lawsuit against them. You know, just, you know, the way that mainstream media covers these people who attack us, the way that they protect them in their coverage, the way that they basically isolate them, you know, is giving a subtle message that, hey, it's okay. I mean, this will be in the news cycle for about 24 hours, but you're good. And whenever they want to make an example by persecuting someone in the name of justice, is typically a Black person in uniform that has done this, that may have even done it by accident, that gets the maximum punishment. So even a Black cop will get persecuted for something that a white cop doesn't even get arrested for, unless there's major upheaval. You know,
how does the media, the mainstream media, deal with the context? You don't get the murder porn looking at this film because it comes in the context of white supremacist culture. You don't get the demonization of the victim, or as with Dylan Roof, after killing the people at the church, treated with respect. You know, you don't. I don't know what you might expect the mainstream media to do, though, given it is what it is, so to speak. So when I write about your film, people are going to say, "Oh, that's in the mainstream media. Should we believe that or not?" You know, I don't know how you're supposed to untangle the mainstream. How much you should expect from white-owned media in covering.
Let me say this real quick, Courtland. It's not what we expect from mainstream media, because and white-owned media, because like Darnley said before, you know, we know our enemy, but it's for reporters like you, and you do the same thing that we did with the American Lows. You know, you make the conscious decision to write and compose this in a way that is respectful, and use the white-owned mainstream media to distribute that perspective. Like I read an article, Courtland, that you did 40 years ago on this,
you're the youngins.
on this woman, and I read it recently, because I didn't read it 40 years ago, but you wrote it 40 years ago on this woman, and now I'm blanking on her name. That was you know, that was in part of the underworld that just ran DC.
Yes.
But you didn't write it in a way where it denigrated what she did. You know, it was very balanced because of what she did with the money that she got
in the time she was living.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So it's all about the integrity of the journalist.
Which we don't have enough of.
Writing from a perspective that is respectful to us, that is balanced. I mean, it is news. You know, back when news was news. Now it's so partisan that the journalist's perspective and how they feel about a story is more important than the story.
And I think another point that's important too is that different Black folks, even when they're in that position, have a different have different levels of investment in whiteness.
Yeah.
You know, some of us are more invested in what white people care about and what they like, and we don't want to offend our white friends. Some of us don't have no white friends.
Exactly.
Some of us might have a couple that we know for years, but so there's that as well, and that's just real. And you can't expect those of us who are more invested in whiteness to be willing to do some of the things that those of us who aren't invested in it all are willing to do, because those of us who aren't invested in it all aren't worried about offending white people or whether or not white people are going to like it. Those of us who might be married to a white woman or man, or you know what I'm saying, or these are your social circles. You're trying to get free in the context of not offending the oppressor. You know what I mean? So I say good luck with that. You know, one day, a rising tide may indeed lift your boat. You know, I choose to get with some like-minded Africans and build a boat lift. You know, so you can go ahead and go over there with them. You know, good luck. You know, but and hey, eventually things probably will work out in your favor. But I think it's important to sort of assess and ascertain and deal with the reality that all of us aren't as invested, or some of us are not more or less invested in appeasing white people and our connection to the culture that they've created isn't the same in all cases. There's 50 million Black people roughly in America. There's 50 million different ways to be Black, as Skippy Gates would say.
And there's another reality too, and that's just the fact that mass media does not have anywhere the reach and influence that it once did. And the fact that there are some Instagrammers right here who have, no disrespect, Cortland, more influence than the Washington Post, especially amongst certain demographics. So we have to address how people are digesting this information nowadays across the generations. And then adjust our messaging across the generation accordingly. That was the whole thing of mass media before. One message, outreach to mass people. Now we're able to target our messaging just like we're doing now.
Right.
I also see we have a question in the audience, dear. We'll bring up Mia shortly.
Oh, I don't see the questions.
Okay, hold on one second. There we go. All right, Mia, you are now live with us. Thank you very much. You have a question for our panelists?
Yes, my name is Mia, and I am from San Antonio, Texas. I'm a counselor for a nonprofit organization, and I actually work in the schools. Most of the kids we work with are African-American students or Hispanic students. And so I heard the dialogue about how we need to empower and I guess equip our kids. So what are some suggestions you could give? Because we have very limited resources, and that is something I've always wanted to do. I've always believed that our children need to hear their story. Our children need to know their value. Need to know that they are not the negative things that the community and everyone else says about them. So what would you suggest?
Anybody, jump at it.
Tell them they have an enemy. Tell them again, you might be limited with what you can do within the system, but I make young people understand, look, you have an enemy out here. You have an entire system that is designed to keep you from knowing yourself, keep you from feeling good about yourself. Everything you watch on TV, everything you watch on the internet is designed to break you down mentally, okay? And to give you an image of yourself that is not who you are. So first, understand that you're a divine being. You're here for a great purpose. You're here for great things. And you're in a world that is constructed by an enemy who doesn't want you to know that. So, I would drive that message home. I tell my children they're divine beings practically every single day. probably every single day. It might be one day I miss here and there, but you know, I'm constantly telling when I put them to bed at night, you know, you're a divine being. You're here for a great and special and unique purpose that only you're here to fulfill. And you need to be the best person that you can be so that you can do that. You know, so you gotta listen to mommy and daddy, but you know, but the point is, you know, remind them that they are, you already remind them who they are from that level. You know what I mean? Then you can fill them with the information that informs that in terms of history and all that kind of thing. But they need to understand that, look, you're here for a great and mighty purpose, and you're in a world that is trying to keep you from knowing that. But that's a secret that all this social media and this and the television isn't going to tell you.
Distractions.
And I like to specifically give you some resources, Mia, that would help. Well, one, definitely read Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's The ISIS Papers, if you're not familiar with that. You know, two, for your Hispanic kids, I highly recommend that they read the book Harvest of Empire by Juan Gonzalez, who is the co-host of Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Yeah.
And also
powerful book that talks about, you know, how colonialism affected people of Latino culture.
This question of a lack of resources, the lack of money, that is a criminal act on the part of this country to have such limited resources for education. I mean, it's taxpayers' money, and every school system that's predominantly Black ends up, you know, the kids being shortchanged. So there's a political fight there to be engaged in, and understand that, you know, you're laboring under an extra special burden. Personally, I tell kids more like what Darnley does, but not about the enemy part. I don't want to scare them to death because this is some scary stuff. But you tell them that they are really smarter than they're smarter than anybody else. You know, that they're really to give them that uplift,
confidence
in any way that you can, with carry that burden, but at the same time look for these revenue streams and ways in which the kids are being shortchanged. And if you can't do anything personally about it at the time, because at least to let them know what the political situation is that you're dealing with, so that the onus won't be on them as kids, thinking that it's somehow their fault or their shortcomings or their lack, when that's not it. And I think by doing that, you get to the enemy part.
And from a technology perspective, parents and folks, a lot of folks, there's a movement to say, let's get the kids off the phones, get them off the tablets. Instead, let's get them using the right apps, using the right software, using the right services. So if a child is there playing video games all day long, well, how about we try to introduce them to Roblox or Black Girls Code, or some of these organizations that are teaching them how to utilize that screen time as producers, not just as consumers.
Exactly. You are so right about that. And then for the apps that they are actually engaging on their phones and their tablets, if you have any interest in creating an app that can actually benefit someone or benefit someone's life, find out how you can integrate the technological tools to create that app so that that child has the app to use on their phone.
Well, thank you. You had something else?
I do have one more question, because unfortunately, a lot of our kids, the environment they come from, their parents are not actively engaged. I feel that they are in a state of depression themselves. They're in a state of oppression themselves. And so they pass that on to their kids as they're parenting. And so the school I'm in, I'm very fortunate to be in. It's a very small school, and it's almost like family. The teachers and the staff are heavily invested in the children and their lives, to the extent that if we have a kid that is acting up or needs some disciplinary action, rather than sending them home to a space where they'll be on their own or a parent won't be engaged, we actually find a place after school where they can still keep up with their work and do the things they need to do. But we also pretty much lecture them. We're almost like parents to an extent, I feel sometimes, which is fine with me. But I feel like they need that. They need that guidance and that growth. So I don't know how, at this point, we just kind of bypass the parents a lot, but I would like to engage the parents more as well.
You know what, Mia? You are possibly being the example for that child. They're looking at you in the class and they're watching you, you may be their example for their life. So continue to do the best that you can, and then also don't limit it there to the children, because the parents may also have the opportunity to learn from you. That parent, you don't know what they're struggling with, so they also may look to you for that kind of thing. So continue to be strong, and also share the resources with the children that they may need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all about who they respect.
Absolutely.
Who they respect. Yeah.
So you guys, we've gone about half hour longer than planned. Dr. West,
This is great.
Dr. West,
Conversation.
Cortland, is there anything you all would like to say to take us up out of here as our elders?
Well, simply stated, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and it can be done if we realize and understand that we are part of the same pot, okay? And get rid of this individuality and stop allowing money to be the rule of all, because it will not see and give us our freedom that we need. How much is enough when it comes to the money? And as Cortland and some other people may have echoed, yeah, we need money. We need it for survival. But to what extent do we have to step out there and sell our soul to the devil?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we are dealing with the system, and while we're taken by the personal stories, the individuals, and I am certainly impressed with teachers like Mia. I just think that is fantastic and a great part of the solution. We are dealing with systemic problems here, which means that we have to have a whole lot more people involved in the fight. But it starts, I do believe, with the information of the kind that we're getting from this film, and so hats off also to the filmmakers on this.
Absolutely.
Shawande and Don, where can people see the film? How can people
tell us how we can get it?
Right. The film, for those who might be just tuning in,
name the film. I'm sorry.
Right. The film, for those who might just be tuning in, is called The American Legacy of White Supremacy. The acronym is The American Lows, LOWS, and the website is theamericanlows.com. Theamericanlows.com. Don't leave off the word the, because that's important. The American Legacy of White Supremacy film is actually available on the website. And for those of you who are watching right now, the code's only going to be good for the day, but we've created a special discount code for you to get a discount on the film. The discount code is SABIFF, all capital letters, okay? SABIFF. Go to theamericanlows.com, click buy. You have to log in, and then you'll enter your promo code to get a discount on the film. And that promo code will expire at midnight tonight, so you'll want to go ahead and get it right away. So theamericanlows.com for the American Legacy of White Supremacy film.
Thank you for that code. Oh.
Say it again, please. Say the code again.
Can we get the banner up there?
San Antonio Black International Film Festival. SABIFF. SABIFF.
Good.
And all capital letters. And you'll get the film. And again, we're 100% independent. I'm not backed by anybody. Nobody's behind me. None of that stuff. This has been a labor of love, and these funds will go to making my next film, which is actually going to be the full story of Tulsa. And most people's films stop at the Tulsa massacre, essentially. Mine's going to start there and talk about what happened with Tulsa for the next several decades afterwards, because that's a story most people don't know.
Nice. Nice.
There are so many elders I've been seeing online, the Tulsa. So you got to get them before they go, man. Just in research, but there's a lot of elders that are talking about it now. You all, this has been just awesome. I am filled. And I miss discussions like this after I left DC. But I really appreciate you all. I just hope we're going to be playing this again and again on the site. But for the film, again, everyone must go to the American Lows website. And also there's a webcast. That Darlene said that's the outtakes of what he couldn't put in the film that you can see on YouTube as well. Or is it on your website as well?
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. So if you just go to YouTube and search for The American Lows, you'll see the American Lows web series. And we have about 70 clips up. One of our clips is actually going viral this week. clip that we have with Francis Cress Welsing has gotten over 76,000 views Sunday, and it's growing every day. So people are starting to discover the web series, and we're getting more likes, more followers, and everything every day. So definitely check out the American Lows web series on YouTube.
Keep going, bro. Keep doing it, Donnelly.
Yeah, you said that all you need is a sip, and then you'll want a gallon. We have gotten our sip today. We have gotten our sip through your film, and we are going to hope that people will go for the gallon, continue to learn, continue to read, continue to invest in yourself. Find out who you are, invest in yourself, and know that you are powerful. Know that you are a child, a divine being that is put here for a reason, like you said. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We have one more day after this. We have more films on other screens, other theaters. So stay with SABIFF.com and just jump in other theaters, 1 or 2, and you can watch Black independent films through the rest of the day. Tonight, we end our film festival with our closing film called One Angry Black Man. And that is by 2 brothers out of Howard, Malik Lumumba and Hans Charles from Howard University put that feature together. So that's something that starts at 7 this evening Central Time. And then tomorrow we start with an interview with Madawi Garima on his film Residue, which deals with the gentrification in Washington, D.C. That starts at 11:30 on Sunday, followed by our awards ceremony, which will award the winners of the film competition. So we thank you, and we encourage everyone to get The American Lows and put in SABIFF. You'll get your discount today. And even if you don't get your discount, you need to get it. You need to have that in your library. Thank you guys, and you have a blessed day, blessed week. I really appreciate you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raider.
It's been
Thank you so
great.
much.
And that is a wrap.
Okay.